On today's show, we'll recap the highs and lows of last night's Ottawa Senators 3-2 OT loss against the Detroit Red Wings.
And speaking of highs and lows, the longest road trip in franchise history is finally over. So what can we take from it now that the Sens are coming home?
All that plus a Sens prospect update.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, and Pillsy, you got a point in the bank, but it does feel a little worse coming against a division rival.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a game. Everyone was calling it a 4-point game, Ross. It ends up being a 3-point game, but not in the Senators' favor. If you could have snuck away, holding on to that 2-1 lead that they had going into the third, that would have been awesome. But it's one of those games, Ross, and we talk about it in the postcast, where the process wasn't really a problem. You're just upset with how it ended.
I'm upset with the lack of offense overall from this team. That's the one thing I want to key in on. It's something that needs to improve going forward. They've only scored more than 2 even strength goals once in their last 5 games. Like the last time they scored more, make it 6. Last time they scored more than 2 even strength goals in a game was against Vancouver like 2 weeks ago. I think that this team has too much offensive talent to be that anemic for this long.
Yeah, and we talked about it, Ross. Everybody knows the injury troubles the Ottawa Senators are going with, but it hasn't affected the top dogs. Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, Drake Batherson, Josh Norris, Claude Giroux, Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, like all the guys that they're paying big bucks to produce offense, they're all healthy, and they have been this entire time. And I don't want to, dog all of them, but certainly a few of them have been a little quiet during this streak. And if this team's going to have success without Linus Ullmark and with the bottom 6 and a D-core that has a lot of injuries, the top guys are going to have to figure out ways to step up.
Yeah, I mean, Brady Tkachuk's the one guy in particular still producing offense. Had a goal last night from almost the blue line. Unreal. However, he's got 5 points in his last 6 games, and he is really carrying this team offensively. Unfortunately, that penalty in the first period where he took off Edvindson's helmet, he had to sit for that, then a high sticking penalty, but he certainly made up for it in that second period where he put this team ahead at the time, and now all of a sudden, there's a bit of a blemish on the Senators going into the third period with a lead. Heading into last night's game, they were a lockdown situation team. They were 15-1-0, another 15-1-1, but they're coming home where they're 9-0 when leading after 2 periods. Huge game tomorrow. We'll have a full preview on tomorrow's show. But speaking of the captain, he spoke to the media after last night's game. I want to play the clip here because I think that he really verbalizes what we're all feeling right now when it comes to the Ottawa Senators.
You look at like our 9-game road trip in total, anything around 500, and I mean, I guess 4-4-1's like right there. So it was a kind of hard couple weeks to kind of get through. So now we kind of gave ourselves. Now we're right in the mix. I mean, I think that's what you want at this time of the year is you always want to be in the mix. You always want to be right there in the fight. And the next 43 games is going to be a hell of a ride.
It's going to be a hell of a ride, Pilsy. It certainly will. And the Senators are firmly in the wild card race. And with the Boston Bruins struggling and even the Tampa Bay Lightning struggling, the Lightning got a huge win in regulation last night to snap a 4-game losing skid themselves. So Ottawa's not the only team that's struggling to put up consistency in this part of the standings or this part of the schedule. But with the Ottawa Senators, at least you can point to some clear issues when it comes to not having their starting goalie and being out on a 9-game road trip, which is unprecedented. I got to imagine it's the longest road trip this season in the NHL. Maybe, I mean, LA started the season on a pretty ridiculous road swing themselves, but it's a testament to, I think, the motivation and the want. That's never been in question with this group. It's just there's certain decisions, and that gets me to last night. I rewatched overtime, and one play in particular is really bugging me, and that's Josh Norris getting possession, and it was at the end of a shift, and instead of just circling back and keeping possession, he tried to force it down low, turns it over, and I don't know if Ottawa touched the puck after that.
And that's the thing, Ross, on 3-on-3 overtime. I know sometimes it has fans rolling their eyes when players enter the blue line, don't like what they see, and just curl back around. But like, there's a reason that happens so often, because it's a smart play. In overtime, possession is key. You're trying to hold on to the puck, wait for a team to make a mistake, and then have one of your offensive guys be able to capitalize on that mistake. And then hopefully you get a 2-on-1, or you get some time in the offensive zone with a little bit of space, and you can make something happen. And Josh Norris had no space for anything to happen. He's kind of right in the corner of the blue line there, right by the benches, and he tried to force it along the boards, and there was no play there. Like, why not just do the conservative thing, peel back and try to enter the zone with a little more confidence and some numbers? So I agree with you. That was a play where that really put the Sens on their heels, and then Jake Sanderson ends up having to take a penalty. The Detroit Red Wings win a draw, then they win another draw, and then Showtime Patty Kane ends it.
Yeah, and it was just a wicked wrist shot from the top of the circles, basically, or even in the slot, but it was from pretty far out. But you knew when that power play happened, like they were scoring on that power play.
Oh, definitely. And Ross, the replay, the different angle shows that Anton Forsberg was completely screened by Nick Jensen. Like, the angle where it shows like from like the back of Patrick Kane and his sight line, you can't even see Forsberg because Jensen is completely covering him there. So again, I said I didn't have much confidence in Forsberg going into this, but he was easily the Senators' best player, in my opinion. And both the goals that were scored were not really his fault, or all three of them, I should say. And he made some huge saves, including that 2-on-1 where Larkin slid it over to Marco Kasper, and he had an amazing glove save. So I got to give a lot of credit to Anton Forsberg, and he's going to have to keep up performances like that if the Ottawa Senators are going to hope to do anything more than just tread water in this wildcard race.
The Ottawa Senators, still no update on Linus Ullmark. I guess the last one was week to
week. Yeah, that's what we're going to be stuck here with, Ross, especially with the back. It's kind of similar to a concussion. Like, it's not like...
I thought you were going to say it's similar to an adductor. I almost just went full panic.
Well, nobody even knows what an adductor is. So Brandon Piller, not a doctor, I'm not going to be able to help out there. But it's similar in a way, Ross, where like it's not clear progression, right? Like when you have like a fractured foot or whatever, you know, at this point, it's going to be like this. At this point, it's going to be like this. And at this point, you should be fully recovered, right? Whereas a back, one day you might be feeling great, and then you test it out and you tweak it again, and now you're even further back in your recovery process than you were before you tested it. So it makes me very nervous that is the injury that our all-star goalie, our Vezina winning goalie that we've signed to 4 more years after this at $8.25 million, and a guy that's on the wrong side of 30s is starting to experience some back problems.
Well, goalies, though, you're not as worried about being 30. You're talking more about the body breaking down, but I feel like goaltenders, we saw it with Craig Anderson, came to Ottawa at 31.
I'm not talking about the skill, Ross. Yeah, exactly. It's just as you get older, and if you start having back problems, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong on this, Brandon Piller, not a doctor, but I feel like that's the kind of thing where it's likely going to get worse over time. So let's hope that's not the case, because there's two teams, Ross. There's the Ottawa Senators with Linus Ullmark and the Ottawa Senators without Linus Ullmark.
Linus Ullmark has still been undefeated in regulation in his last 9 games. That's 8-0-1. Last point about Ottawa's offense drying up, and then we'll talk more about the entirety of the road trip and what we're hoping to see on Thursday against Buffalo, as the Senators aren't coming home for long. Just the one game, then they'll be on the road in Pittsburgh on Saturday, back home on Sunday against the Dallas Stars before embarking on another 1-game trip, 1 game at home, or 2 games after that at home. But it is just so back and forth. Like, don't even get me started on the upcoming schedule. It's not as bad as the road trip, but going to New York, then coming back, and then going back to New York for 2 more games against the Devils and the Rangers the following week makes no sense to me. That said, the Sens offense needs to get going wherever they're playing. The expected goals percentage, which basically it takes the shot volume, but also the high danger level of those chances. Ottawa earlier this season, even though they were losing some games, they were still finding ways to create more than the other team. There was just an Achilles heel, whether it was goaltending or bad special teams at certain points of the year. But right now, if you go all the way back to the win against the Hurricanes, the 3-0 win against the Hurricanes, they have been dominated in the expected goals percentage in most games. Like, they're in the 30s in 4 different games. They're in the 40s in, I think, 5 more. They have only won the expected goals percentage at 5-on-5 twice since before that Hurricanes game, the 5-1 win against the Ducks. Since then, only twice have they had more than 50% of the expected goals.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Ross, like especially up against teams that are battling for the same playoff spots as you. If you're not going to be able to outplay them and you don't have a goalie that can steal you wins, it's going to be hard to get those victories and even hard to get a point in those types of games.
But the Senators do get a point against the Detroit Red Wings. Let us know in the comments on YouTube your thoughts on last night's game and overall on the road trip. We'll discuss the 9 games that were next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know that FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and it's playoff time in the NFL. Big upsets, game-winning drives. The NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Ross, I was pumping it up on the postcast, but if people didn't listen to the postcast, I got to tell the people about this. FanDuel might not be happy about me broadcasting this so loudly, but it's literally called a no-brainer boost. Go to FanDuel.com, and the bet is Bills to complete 1+ pass up against the Broncos. The odds were minus 10,000. They're now minus 110. Now, you can only do a max bet of $20, but if the Bills complete 1 pass against the Broncos, you got $18.80 in your account. It's a no-brainer bet. So go to FanDuel.com today and do that. And remember, new customers can get started with $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, Pillsy. So the Ottawa Senators currently sitting with 41 points in the standings. They are a .526 points percentage, which is enough to be considered a playoff team. But those pesky extra games for the Pittsburgh Penguins and Columbus Blue Jackets, who went to a shootout against each other last night, worst case scenario.
No, we like those extra games for them, Ross. It keeps a little ace up our sleeve.
Okay, wins in hand.
Yeah.
Wins in
Hopefully,
hand.
I've been noticing you haven't been calling them wins in hand recently, Ross. You've been calling them games in hand. Just want to point that out.
I know. It all depends on the mood that day. And nobody in the East wildcard race is playing tonight. The only East teams in action are the Washington Capitals hosting the Vancouver Canucks and the Florida Panthers visiting Utah to take on the Hockey Club. But there's 10 games on Thursday's slate and lots of implications, like the Boston Bruins taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Who do you want to win in that game? Yeah, it's tough.
I guess Boston, yeah, because like I've mentioned, I've flirted with the idea of going for the division, but let's stick with the wild card here for now.
Really? I'm the other side of it. One, Boston's on a 5-game losing streak. So for me, I don't want them to get any hope. I want them to crash and burn. And Tampa, based on their roster, is a playoff team. Like, they're a playoff caliber team. So if I believe Tampa's going to make the playoffs anyways, they may as well just be the 3rd team in the Atlantic. And then I would rather battle the Bruins for a wild card spot.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Yeah. And speaking of games in hand,
if we could have it, Ross, somehow both teams get 0 points, but unfortunately that is not possible.
that cannot happen. But the Bruins have also played 5 more games than Tampa. Like that's wild. And Tampa's got more wins already. So I think it's a mirage seeing the Bruins ahead of the Lightning in the standing. So I'm going to be hard on the Lightning bandwagon for that game, just knowing that the Bruins are in free fall mode once again after their new coach bump wore off. Lots of other games, like the Oilers playing the Penguins again tomorrow night. Like, I love when the Oilers come to the East and not play the Sens, because it feels like they always do well, like they did in Boston last night, beating them 4-0. But with Ottawa, they've got their 4-4-1 road trip in the bag. Like, think back to that game in Seattle, Pilsy, on December 17th. That feels like an eternity ago when Ottawa got that 3-0 shutout victory. Tim Stützle's breakaway goal in the third period. Like, I feel like I've lived 5 lives since then.
Yeah, seriously. It's been a whirlwind of a road trip. I mean, even Ross, like me being in Calgary for that game seems like forever ago. And that was a part of this 4-4-1 statistic here. So thank goodness that road trip was over. I mean, I think it was good for the Ottawa Senators to get on the road and have to battle that adversity, but it's time they come home, and I'm glad it's the Buffalo Sabres they see. You hope you can pounce on a team that's, although they've been doing better, they're still down bad. You hope that Ottawa can take advantage of that at home, get the good people at the CTC a win, and hopefully build some momentum off that.
And the fact that you look at it, and I know 4-4-1, it's not what people want to see. It's 24th in the NHL in terms of overall points since December 17th.
Yeah, but no one else was on a 9-game road trip.
Nobody else was. Now, Ottawa only got 2 regulation wins there, but I'm not worried about giving Western Conference teams points. And frankly, I'd use it as a positive that Ottawa was able to grind out those OTs against Calgary and Vancouver. Ottawa ends the road trip with a -4 goal differential. They only average 2.33 goals for per game. Again, the offense needs to get it going. Their goals against average was 2.78. I'm also a little concerned. It is better than it was beforehand, because they had an awful road power play to start the year. Their power play went 16.7%, and their penalty kill actually went up from their season average to 77.8 during this road trip. The only other thing that I don't love is their shots on goal. And obviously the 2 games in Dallas and St. Louis impacted this, because they were just not shooting the puck. Only 13 against Dallas and 20 against St. Louis, but they only averaged 26.3 shots per game, a full shot less than they were giving up across the entirety of the road trip. So the numbers don't look sparkling, but when you put into context everything, you can understand it. And gosh, how bad would 4-5-0 look? Like, thank God they got a point last night at least.
Yeah, big time. And I think too, Ross, like, at least other than the St. Louis games, it's not like they got the wheels beat off them in any of these games, right? Like, they were right there. Winnipeg and Dallas, they had the lead. They had the lead in this Detroit game. It's just, and you mentioned on the postcast, I feel like the defensive part of their game has still been sound, and that points to good coaching, in my opinion. It's just the top offensive guys haven't been able to keep it going, and the bottom 6 is just in shambles right now, so they're not producing any offense either.
Hey, what'd you think of Jan Yannick's game last night? He had his Senators debut during the regular season.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I think you can say more about it, Ross. I can't say I particularly noticed him. I didn't think that fourth line was that good, but you seem to be impressed with it.
Not impressed per se. 7.5 minutes of ice time. They got caught out there for a long shift in the third period where Detroit was able to get their top line on. They hemmed them in for quite a while. I just saw enough of the kind of determination going to the net on the first shift, getting into a little skirmish, that sort of thing. I just want to see him play again. I want to see him play another game, especially while these other guys are out of the lineup. Like, we know what Cole Reinhardt can do, right? I feel like instead of Reinhardt, I would like to see some more of Jan Yannick. Like, don't forget, this guy was buzzing in preseason, was the final cut. I was banging on the table that he should make this team at a training camp. So he's healthy. He was producing in Belleville to a certain extent. So I just want to see another game or two of Jan Yannick.
Yeah, and I mean, he has NHL experience. We talked about it. He has 22 games with the Arizona Coyotes under his belt. Cole Reinhardt got his opportunity that I feel like he deserved. He played decent, but I'm with you. Let's give Jan Yannick a bit more of a sample size here.
And speaking of Belleville, we've got our prospect roundup coming up next. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments on that 4-4-1 road trip. It's nothing to write home about, but it is something where you bank the points. You get 9 points on this road trip out of a possible 18, and you pack things up, you get home, and you work against Buffalo. That to me is, sometimes you get a letdown game after a long road trip, but you cannot go 0-2 against Buffalo in your first 2 games against them. If I'm the Senators, I'm showing the team the video from the first game against Buffalo and being, you guys want this? You guys want this again? No.
And Ross showing them, what was the Sabres losing streak? 13
games. Yeah.
You show them that and say, look, this team lost 13 games and they haven't made the playoffs in its 13 years as well. Like, you cannot let a team like this come into our barn after a 9-game road trip and embarrass you. You just can't. So we're not going to call it a must win, Ross, but like, if you lose this game, oh my God, does that deflate any kind of confidence you have moving forward here?
Sabres are 4-2-1 in 7 games since the 13-game losing streak. But again, there's no reason, no excuses. We'll have a full preview of that game tomorrow. Next, it's our prospect update. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. I went to a couple concerts last year. It's awesome. I got a theater event going on this year as well. And I'm going to an Ottawa Senators game versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I got my tickets on Gametime, of course, because Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you're not wasting time searching through thousands of tickets. When I was looking for my tickets for that Tampa game, I love that they have the panoramic view from your seat, Ross, because I've never been to the Tampa Bay barn. So you're picking seats on a map and you're like, well, is the sight line good for this? I don't know, but you can see it. And with your phone, you can turn your phone full view and you can see exactly what it's going to look like from the seat you're sitting in. So that is an awesome part of Gametime. And turn on the all-in pricing, so it shows you the total cost up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time.
All right, Pilsy. So we've got the road trip in our back pockets. We're skipping on home, and it's a full day off for the Ottawa Senators. Pay your taxes, shovel the front porch, and get ready for tomorrow's game. But Sens prospects have been playing all over the world, and in one part of the world, a player's packing his stuff and coming back to Canada. Vladimir Nikitin, friend of the show. People in Ottawa may have seen him with Team Kazakhstan at the World Juniors. Last year, he played for the Chilliwack Chiefs in the BCHL. He went home to play in the MHL, in the Russian second division, or the Russian minor division, I should say, like the under-20 league over there, their equivalent of the OHL. However, he has now been traded to the Nanaimo Clippers, and he will be coming back to North America.
Yeah, I think this is good, Ross. I think obviously when you're a young guy from Kazakhstan, the idea of getting to play closer to home in the MHL is probably appealing, but it didn't really go well for him there. In 12 games, he had a 4-8 record, a 461 goals against, and an 884 save percentage. He was getting peppered with shots. Like I'm looking at his game log here, a couple games in the 40s, even one game where he had 54 shots against. Like, he was getting his work in. I'm not sure. Maybe you can look it up while I'm chatting, Ross. I'm not sure where the Nanaimo Clippers are in the WHL standings. If that's kind of a,
it's at Junior A, not quite WHL.
Oh, sorry, that's BCHL, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where they're at in the standings.
I got you.
Let's hear it.
The Nanaimo Clippers are in 8th place out of 10 in the Coastal Conference. Chilliwack Chiefs in 1st place.
Okay, so actually, I think that's good, Ross. I think it's good for him to go to a team that's struggling a little, so he's going to continue to see those shots. He's going to be playing on Vancouver Island. That's going to be a very interesting shift from playing in the MHL. But I think with goalie prospects, and we've heard it from Mads, coming over to North America is a good idea. So you get a little bit more used to the North American game, North American ranks. Your English can improve. We had him on the show last season after he scored his goal with the Chilliwack Chiefs, and his English was coming along. So you got to hope that he feels a little bit more confident in that and can be comfortable going to a new team. But overall, I think this was a good move for Nikitin's development.
The general manager and head coach of Chilliwack, Brian Maloney, says Vlad was a great Chief who had an excellent World Junior tournament. We're really happy that he's making his way back to Canada. Nanaimo has a great opportunity available for him, and we wish him all the best. Classy statement, and that to me says that Nikitin will be the starter in Nanaimo. Hopefully it works out that way. I really hope he gets to play. They've only had one goalie in Nanaimo. He's played all 20, or wait, that's just qualified goalies. The other guys just played. Oh, they got a guy playing 10. Yeah, he's not great. 887 save percentage there. So they've got 2 rookies and then a guy with a 3.51 goals against, 904 save percentage. So hopefully he can go and grab the net there and really get into a situation where I don't know what's next for him, but he's a fun prospect to watch. If you saw him at the World Juniors, he's doing those wild poke checks and all over the place. So a really raw prospect, but we'll see what's next for Vladimir Nikitin. Sticking out west, the WHL, Carter Yakimchuk. There's good and there's bad. What do you want to start with?
There's good? Well, hit me with the good because I know the bad.
Well, the Calgary Hitmen are loading up, Pilsy.
Okay, yes. Yeah, good point. Yep. And this is funny, Ross, because at the start of the year, you and I were like, well, what's going on with the Hitmen? Are they just going to hang on to him? Are they going to trade him at the deadline? But they flipped it. They're the team trading a lot of assets to acquire guys, and they're having a pretty good season.
They're having an amazing season versus what I would say their expectations were from the outside. But how about the message you're sending to the locker room? They go out, they get a 20-year-old defenseman, so a veteran of the league. They go out and get a 20-year-old goaltender, Daniel Hauser, and then you go get a 19-year-old Sawyer Mineo who played for Team Canada at the World Juniors, and then you're not even done there. You're still going out and getting another guy, Carson Burney. So they've added like 6 players. If you go back to Tanner Howe, who they added from Regina about a month ago. So that's the good news. The bad news is Carter Yakimchuk's out week to week with a lower body injury. So hopefully, just like Linus Allmark, these are not long-term that end up being months and just weeks. But man, that sucks because he was on pace to become one of the biggest goal-scoring defensemen in WHL history.
Yeah, just week to week is the new curse term for the Ottawa Senators franchise, Ross. Linus Allmark and now Carter Yakimchuk. Why can't we have nice things? I blame Team Canada for this, Ross. In my mind, if he was playing in the tournament, he wouldn't have got hurt like this. So when somebody's down, just keep kicking them while they're down. So I'm going to throw my blame over to Team Canada, not even inviting him to camp.
Oh my goodness. And he's never going to be close to the number 1 defenseman goal scoring leader in the WHL. This guy named Troy Mick, Pilsy, 267 games, 204 goals.
As a defenseman?
As a defenseman. Number 2 on the list is at 147 goals. So he's beat him by almost 55.
Oh my God.
And then even after that, it goes down to 110, 108. And then Belleville Sens legend Stephen Elliott is number 5 on this list. He's at 82 goals, but Carter Yakimchuk at 67 goals in 220 games in the WHL. But hey, whether it's just 1 week or whether it's 3 or 4 weeks, Pilsy, the Calgary Hitmen are pointing that they're serious, as the WHL trade deadline is coming up this week, if not already. It might be tomorrow. So I'm excited to follow them into April and see what Carter Yakimchuk can do in high leverage games. And now he's got a legitimate NHL prospect partner in Sawyer Mineo, who I'd expect they'll play on the top pair together once he's back healthy.
Yeah, that is good news for the team. You hope Carter Yakimchuk can fully recover soon and get back to action. But by all accounts, Ross, it looks like this team's going to make the playoffs and be built to go on a deep playoff run, which is, if you don't have your top prospect, 7th overall pick, playing in the NHL, you want him to get as much experience as possible and get experience playing in high-pressure games.
The Calgary Hitmen are 3rd in the WHL's Eastern Conference, tied with Medicine Hat, but behind them in the standings. But they do have 3 more games to be played than Medicine Hat, and then Saskatoon is leading the Eastern Conference. So really exciting times for Calgary, and we hope that Carter Yakimchuk can be a big part of it. A team that always makes the playoffs in the Ontario Hockey League is the London Knights.
Yes.
And they are getting elite production from another 2024 Senators draft pick. The London Knights, first place in the Western Conference, tied with the Windsor Spitfires and Blake Montgomery. I feel like every prospect update we're talking about Blake Montgomery, but his hot streak is continuing. His point streak now at 9 games. Unreal. He had 3 points in a 9-4 win Friday against Niagara Ice Dogs.
I think it's 8, unless my math is wrong, but still.
I'm not a math guy.
Very good, and he is crushing it. Like 27 points in 21 games. And Ross, we talked about it last prospect update. He had a real opportunity with a handful of London Knights players off playing in the World Juniors to get an elevated role, and he certainly took advantage of that. I mean, when does the World Juniors start? The 26th?
Yeah, but the camp started beforehand.
Yeah, true. Well, either way, from the 29th to now, he had 1 point, 3 point, 1 point, 3 point nights. So like he really popped off.
He's playing unbelievably. He's up to 27 points in 21 games with the London Knights. And get this, only 2 minor penalties. He's got 4 penalty minutes, and he's plus 20. So,
man,
what a decision.
Awesome.
We knew it was a good one. Obviously, when you develop with the London Knights, you're in a professional environment and everything. But he had 10 points in 10 games with Lincoln in the USHL, and then he's just popped off since coming over. So it's great to see. People said at the draft he was going to be one of those steals. He's an overager, though, so he's 19 years old already. But my goodness, man, what a post-draft season for him.
But Ross, part of me was a little nervous with him going to London that he wasn't going to be able to have opportunities high up in the lineup just because that team's so good, right? Like I was like, well, obviously the London Knights are kind of the premier developing spot in the OHL, so it's great to have a player land there. But also part of me was like, well, now he's going to be stapled to a third line and he's going to have to fight for second power play unit time. But I'm not sure where he is in the lineup and how many minutes and where he is on the power play and things like that. But clearly he has not been kind of stuck in that roster, and he's been able to produce either way.
He has. Who else has caught your attention in the Sens prospect world?
Well, I want to stick in the OHL, Ross, and let's go to Lucas Ellinas with the Kitchener Rangers. He continues to light it up as he has 29 points in 38 games. His career high last year with the Rangers was 33 points in 67 games. He's on pace to smash that. He's projected, if he plays 68 games, he's going to get 52 points projected, mind you, but he continues to keep it rolling. He's on a 2-game point streak. He had 2 points up against my Guelph Storm as they get the 4-3 overtime win there. But the Kitchener Rangers are on a 6-game winning streak, and he's had points in all of those except one, a 2-1 win over the Bulldogs. So he's a guy that continues to keep it rolling. And yet again, another pick where you're looking at a guy in the 4th round of 2024, and he seems like value-wise, another great value pick.
Love to see it. For a team that might not have the top-end talent behind Carter Yakimchuk, there are some Sens prospects making noise, and we will continue to update you on their seasons as things develop. Billsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me, Ross. Just taking a look at the Belleville Senators. They played 2 games on the weekend. Unfortunately, they lost their game on Friday to the Syracuse Crunch 3-2. But I was circling that game up against Utica, Ross. Utica Comets are not a good team, as they are last in the division with now a 7-17-4 record, only 18 points. And the Ottawa Senators took care of business there as they won 7-2. I'm pretty sure Wyatt Bongiovanni had a hat trick in that game. Crooker popped off as well. But the Belleville Senators still have their work cut out for them, Ross, as they are in 6th place right now, chasing the Syracuse Crunch, who have 5 more points than them. But they do have 3 games in hand, so you hope that they can make up some of that ground. But we can't have the Belleville Senators missing the playoffs. It's going to be tough with 6 of their top players up in Ottawa due to injuries, but we want to see guys like Crooker, guys like the captain, Peelsy, Jeremy Davis, and Stephen Halliday. We want to see them hold down the fort while this is going on.
And Mads Sogard in goal. Need to see Mads get some consistency in his game after coming back from injury. My final thoughts. Did you see the clip last night? They showed it on TSN. Ian Mendez getting a fan a beer after Josh Norris knocked it off. This guy is a chronic beer knocker, as Martian had his $25 seltzer knocked off the wall in warm-up in Vegas. So I didn't think, they probably thought Martian had enough. They didn't go out and get him one, but all class. And it turns out that guy's like buddies with the Norris family or something. Hilarious backstory there too.
Yeah, and it was good, Ross, when I was watching it. I saw the beer spill, and I thought they were just going to cut away from it, but good job by the camera crew with TSN, zooming in on the guy, and you can see him trying to save it, the beer foaming up, and he's like, man, like... But if you're sitting in the front row and you decide to put your beer up there, it's kind of on you. So I think he understood that. But yeah, good move by our guy Ian Mendez, hooking him up with a free beverage there.
It's like sitting front row at a comedy show, right? You know what you're signing up for.
Yeah, exactly. Or at a concert, you might get some sweat on you. So you got to know what you're looking at when you're doing the front row seats. But that was a funny moment.
Thank you to everyone for having a front row seat to our show. We appreciate you guys so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Your team every day. We take that very seriously here. 2-a-days when the Senators play. We'll have a game day preview episode tomorrow. And we're also working on getting some guests. It's been a little while since we've dipped into the guest jar. It's been a busy time for both of us, but we're still here for you each and every day, breaking down the latest in Sens land. But stay tuned and let us know in the comments as well if there are any guests, whether recurring or new, that you'd like to hear on Locked On Senators. For today, we say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and engaging with the show. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.